Hello, I'm Richard Hooper and this is SatTV Week. Now I'm here at Global MilSatCom in London where I'm pleased to be joined by Nik Smith of Lockheed Martin. Thank you for joining me today, Nick.
Hi Richard, good to be here.
Now, we're at a Global MilSatCom show.
Yep.
Lockheed Martin, what are you pushing at the moment?
Well, I think for us, Lockheed Martin is one of those companies that, quite frankly, we're able to do so many things for our customers across a range of areas in space and space technologies. Specifically this show, name's in the title right, Global MilSatCom. We're a world leader in especially military satellite communication systems. So really what we're here to do is talk to customers, partners, allies and industry partners as well about where we think we have the capabilities, the expertise to make them successful in whatever they're doing. And that's really our focus.
Now, there are challenges in the market at the moment, and there's nothing more challenging than the military sector. What do you see moving forward?
Look, I think part of it right now is some market dynamics. We're seeing lots of changes around space, the whole of the space ecosystem, the space market. And that clearly plays into how we as industry can respond to some of the demands from our customers. Which types of satellites and platforms are going to have a long-term future, which ones are investing in, which technologies to invest in. That is changing quite rapidly, and that's quite well reflected in different areas. Specifically, though, from a military perspective, what I think many nations, and my area of expertise is the UK and Europe, and that's where I'm employed to look after, they're now trying to think about, okay, how to respond to some of the threats that we're seeing. And these are military targeted threats against space systems. And that's everything from trying to really think about the cyber assurance of the systems, how do you maintain this sort of cyber protection of the ground systems, the link, and the spacecraft themselves, but also think about the supply chain and the build of those satellites. How do you make sure that's assured? And then, at a more sophisticated level, how do you actually protect the asset on orbit? And how do you respond to be that anti-satellite, missile technology, co-orbital threats, sometimes just sort of non-kinetic threats as well. We've put a lot of investment into that as a company. It's one of the areas where we've got a lot of capability to bring, and that again I think is an area where many nations now, in my conversations, trying to think about, okay, how do I start thinking about protecting these assets?
Now, you mentioned it, so I'm going to talk about it. Security, cyber security, ever-present threat.
Yep.
The technology you employ for the satellites, how does it differ for the military sector?
In areas, in quite a few areas, some parts of it are the same. So, communications technology is communications technology. Some elements of the payload itself. But it's when you start thinking about the design of the entire system from the outset. So how do you think about every component in that subsystem from the outset and making sure that you are minimizing the threat surface and threat vector at every area? That could be around the level of just inherent cyber protection you put around the ground systems themselves, something around the technology you put into the link protection, so your cryptographic equipment, how much crypto you put in there, the waveform itself, the amount of advancement in the waveform, and then into the satellite itself. And of course, some of those are how do you protect it and how do you build in systems on board that protect it, but also how do you think about how those different elements sort of interact with each other. But you have to take a full system approach. You can't just simply plug in a military satellite into the system and hope it'll operate. You've got to think about the whole ecosystem from the ground through the link to the satellite from the outset, and then really understand the threats against it and mitigate each of those threats all the way down.
Finally, challenges moving forward for Lockheed Martin. Are there any on the horizon?
It's a great question. I think for us, and it's not really a challenge, I see it more as an opportunity. We are embarking right now on how we can start taking some of the capabilities, some of the expertise we've got that we've been doing for many years for the US DoD, but how can we start that taking to more allies and more of the sort of global customers who have demand for that technology? We've had some recent great success down in Australia where they've recognized the capability we're bringing there. Clearly, the UK, real interest to us, but across Europe and across the world as well, is how do we bring that across and how do we start bringing some of our capability, expertise, and that decades of sort of investment to help them solve some of the most complex issues. A lot of it based around how do they respond to that emerging threat.
Nick, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.